Make sure that you have reviewed ADP 6-22.1 paragraph 2-33 through 2-37 and ADP 6-22 chapter 1. Also, scan the Say No to Yes Men and Servant Leadership readings and watch the Magic Carpet team building video. In this video, we'll be going through slides that correspond to a specific lesson within the virtual basic leadership course. Many times throughout this video, we'll come upon slides that have the heading either discussion board or activity and complete these topics. Activities will be completed and sent to your assigned facilitator through email or submission on Blackboard. It will benefit you, in fact, to pause the video and go complete prior to continuing the video. This leads us to our first discussion board topic. Place yourself in the group's shoes. Would you be a leader or a follower? Explain why. Without using the example the group used to solve the challenge, explain your initial solution you would use to solve the challenge. After participating in the discussion, proceed to the next slide. But at this time, pause the video and complete this topic. Hello. My name is Staff Sergeant Burgess, and I'll be giving you a virtual block of instructions on B112, Followership and Servant Leadership Fundamentals. Scope. At the end of this 6-hour learning event, you'll be able to identify different types of followers that make up a team and how to work with or influence each type. You'll also be able to identify the importance of servant leadership principles and how you interact, adapt, and think about your new position as a sergeant. You'll apply counseling, coaching, mentoring techniques for specific follower behaviors while employing servant leadership principles. Enabling learning objective alpha. Action. Describe the characteristics of the effective follower. Conditions. As a learner attending BLC using a direct level leadership perspective in new environments, giving references, practical exercises, and classroom discussions. Standards. The learner will create an expository/compare and contrast essay in accordance with 1009 Whiskey Expository Compare and Contrast Essay Rubric, reflecting understanding of servant leadership and followership. Enabling learning objective Bravo. Actions. Describe the principles of servant leadership. Conditions. As a learner attending BLC using a direct level leadership perspective in new environments, giving references, practical exercises, and classroom discussions. Standards. The learner will create an expository compare and contrast essay in accordance with 1009 Whiskey Expository Compare and Contrast Essay Rubric, reflecting the understandings of servant leadership and followership. So, we're going to go over followership and leadership in this class. But first, we're going to talk about being an effective follower. The second half of this lesson deals with leadership. That brings us to discussion board topic number 2. Why do you think we're discussing followership in the leadership course? After participating in this discussion, proceed to the next slide. But at this time, pause the video and complete this topic. So, as this slide reflects, followership is simply the capability and willingness to follow a leader. Followership and leadership go hand in hand. Without followers, there can be no leaders. Understanding and mastering the relationship between leadership and followership can make a difference between mediocrity and excellence. So, this slide depicts a two-dimensional model of followership behavior as developed by Robert Kelly. Robert Kelly is a professional at the Graduate School of Industrial Administration at Cambridge Mellon University and the president of Consultants to Executives and Organizations, Limited Edition. The model shows two different types of followers in their range of behavior. For instance, at the top, you see an arrow pointing to independent critical thinkers, and at the bottom of the slide, the arrow points to the opposite end of the range, dependent uncritical thinkers. Independent critical thinkers are individuals who think for themselves, give constructive criticisms, and are their own person, are innovative and creative. Dependent, uncritical thinkers must be told what to do, quote unquote, can't even make it to the bathroom on their own, and just do not think. In between these two ranges are more typical followers who take directions and do not challenge leadership or the group. The second dimension of the model refers to a follower's degree of active engagement in work. Active soldiers take initiative, assume responsibility, participate actively, are self-starters, and go above beyond for the job. Passive soldiers are lazy, inactive, need prodding, requires constant supervision, and dodge responsibility. In between these two extremes are the typical followers who gets the job done without supervision after being told what to do. The model also depicts 5 different types of categories of followers, as shown by the 4 quadrants and the circle in the middle. These categories are effective followers, alienated followers, sheep, yes people, and survivors. The following examples will help you clarify the differences between the types. So, PFC Olive is a passive person. He simply does what he's told without thinking about what he's doing. He passively complies with orders and takes no actions in the support of the squadron and its goals without being specifically told to do so. His passive personality and lack of critical thinking defines him as a sheep. PFC Olive is easily manipulated and pushed around. He fails to critically think about what he's doing. Then we have Specialist Toady. Specialist Toady is extremely active. She volunteers for everything she can. Unfortunately, she mindlessly agrees with everything she hears from the flight leader. Specialist Toady lacks the ability to critically appraise policies and form opinions on her own. Specialist Toady regularly carries out any and all orders. In the big picture, Toady is definitely a yes person. In her rush to gain favors from superiors, she will get into trouble. She can also be easily manipulated. Sergeant Rupture always has a complaint. He is an independent thinker and critical thinker of all ideas and policies that come down from on high. He points out every problem that he can think of. Unfortunately, he's also passive. Sergeant Rupture takes no actions of his own to improve the situation. It is easier to complain than to work and to make things better. Rupture does not get along with the rest of the flight. He is an alienated follower. Rupture will wear down the morale of everybody in the unit. Staff Sergeant Waveless has a motto. If the minimum wasn't good enough, there wouldn't be a minimum. Waveless lives in the middle of the follower's model. He is not particularly committed to working with the group unless the goal will keep him out of trouble. Waveless does not want to stick out and therefore is a mediocre performer. On occasions, he may get up and do something for the flight line, but his motivations is to stay in the background and not get in trouble. He offers no suggestion to the chain of command on his own. Waveless is known as the survivor. Specialist Rip Rock plays an active role in the motor pool. He actively seeks out responsibility and works on his own to accomplish unit goals. When he sees something that can be improved, Rip Rock thinks through things and offers suggestions for improvement up the chain of command. By being a critical thinker and displaying an active personality, Rip Rock will be categorized as an effective follower. In the last example, Rip Rock was defined as an effective follower. But now, let's go over the characteristics of an effective follower. So, for the characteristics of an effective follower, there's 4 of them. The first one is being enthusiastic. Enthusiasm is in contagious energy. Once you are assigned to a task and you accomplish that task, you'll want your efforts to be accepted by the group. Your level of enthusiasm will have a direct effect on the group or the leader's feelings concerning the task. Displaying an upbeat and energetic behavior when performing and promoting tasks is the way to go. Mission accomplishment will often rest with the follower's enthusiasm as well as the leader's. Next is being proactive. Effective followers need to take a proactive stance towards organizational problems. Being proactive means more than taking initiative. Our behavior is the function of our decisions, not our conditions. we have to take the initiative and responsibility to make things happen. This includes building effective relationships with your superior. Highly active people recognize the importance of accepting responsibility. Next, you have to own the territory. A proactive follower critically considers policies and actively presents suggestions up the chain of command that will directly contribute to the unit's success. Making a unit better is the task that needs to be owned by the followers within the units and the squadrons. Last, we have versatility and flexibility. Beating your head against a brick wall isn't the most effective way to get things done. A better approach is to take a step back and reevaluate the situation. A second look will usually reveal a better way to the other side of the wall, i.e., you can go around the wall, you can always climb over the wall, or you can dig a tunnel under it. The point is choosing another option that is less painful than trying to break through the wall. Apply the same principle when approaching an assigned task. Take a few minutes to reevaluate the task before wasting time and energy trying to get over a seemingly insurmountable task. Use your brain before you use your head. Also within the characteristics, let's talk about complaining. Is complaining a good or a bad thing? Well, complaining can be a great tool for initiating change if we outlaw complaining in the workplace, as some managers try to do, all we do is drive it underground where it becomes even more counterproductive and toxic. So let's change unconstructive behaviors into constructive ones by the two arrows on the slides. Oh, unconstructive behaviors. Well, one of the unconstructive behavior is complaining to whoever will listen. We can make it but constructive by complaining to somebody who can do something about it. If your boss is the problem, complaining to your coworkers can be a lot of fun, but it changes nothing. Complain to your boss or your boss's boss, and watch the way that you complain. Unconstructive behavior, pointing fingers. Constructive, look at yourself first. Maybe it's just you who has the problem and everyone else is fine with the situation. Try to recognize those situations where everything is actually fine. You're just being irrational and annoyed. Or you can say, like a phrase, it happens to me all the time. Also ask yourself, to what extent are you part of the problem? How can you contribute to either the problem or to the solution? Before complaining about others, make sure you know what your role in the issue is. Another one is seeking blame. But constructively, you should seek solutions. Going into with the intentions of making people admit that they're at fault is rarely productive. Does it really matter whose fault it is? Forget blame and focus on moving on and finding the lasting solutions. Unconstructive, you're only complaining. But constructive is also appreciating what is good. Complain when there's a reason to, but remember to appreciate the good stuff and also just don't always complain. Or in resiliency class, we call that hunting the good stuff. All right, so within the characteristics of an effective follower, you should ask yourself this question. How does an effective follower display these leadership attributes and competencies? And of course, the attributes on the leadership requirements model is character, presence, and intellect, and the competencies are leads, develops, and achieves. So, with character, an effective follower is not lazy, but takes initiative, learning towards the activity in and the active-passive range. The presence. The effective follower's characteristic of versatile and flexible is the way an effective follower can display resilience. Intellect. An effective follower tends to be near the independent critical thinking point of the independent critical thinking / dependent uncritical thinking range. Leads. We'll move into the competencies with leads. The effective follower's characteristic of proactive means more than just taking initiative. We also take responsibility for our actions, just like the leader does. This includes building effective relationships and trust with our superiors. Develops. The effective follower of characteristic of enthusiasm is the way an effective follower creates a positive environment. achieves. The effective follower characteristics of owning the territory demonstrates how an effective follower actively presents suggestions up the chain of command and directly contributes to the unit service's success. These are just a few follower characteristics relating to the attributes and competencies of the leadership requirements model. All right, so this brings us to our discussion board topic number 3. And it comes from the Springerberg case study handout in the handouts tab on Blackboard. You can find it under the lesson Bravo 112. All right. Which Army value does an effective follower exhibit the most? Which Army values were demonstrated in the Springerberg's case study? So after participating in this discussion, proceed to the next slide. But at this time, pause the video and complete this topic. All right. So an effective follower displays all of the Army values, which are loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. All right. So loyalty, looking out for everybody's well-being and the leaders. Duty, fulfilling your obligations or carrying out things to the best of your ability. And we have respect, tactfully doing things the way that others can grow and have a high opinion of you, your peers and your superiors, or treating people the way that they should be treated. Selfless service, going the extra mile for the mission, your peers, and the leadership. Honor, carrying out actions and habits without dishonesty. Integrity, doing what's right legally and morally. And personal courage, facing fears, dangers, or adversity, physical or moral, small or big. All right. And this brings us to discussion board topic number 4. What kind of follower are you? How would you use your characteristics of effective following when you return to your unit? Or when you're done with this lesson? After participating in this discussion, proceed to the next slide. But at this time, pause the video and complete this topic. So let's talk about the dynamics and the relationship between leaderships and followership. Leadership and followership are linked concepts. Neither can be comprehended without understanding the other. The study of followership has largely been neglected because everybody wants to know how to be the best leader, but you have to also be a follower. Leadership and followership are best seen as roles. The leader must lead and do it well to retain leadership. Followers must follow and do it well to retain followership. Good leaders enhance followers just as good followers enhance leaders. When all seeking to lead, there are no followers. And when all seeking to follow, there's no leaders. Just like the saying, when there are too many chiefs and not enough Indians. Or too many Indians and not enough chiefs. All right? So now, this is the second half of the lesson, and let's talk about servant leadership. While servant leadership is a timeless concept, the phrase servant leadership was coined by Robert K. Greenleaf in the Serve as a Leader, an essay that he first published in 1970. In that essay, Greenleaf said, servant leaders is servant first. It begins with the natural feeling that one wants to serve first. Then conscious choice brings one to aspire to lead. That person sharply differs from one who leads first, perhaps because the need to assume an unusual power, drive, or acquire material possessions. The leader first and the servant first are two extreme types. Between them are the shadings and blendings that are part of the inevitable variable of human nature. So within servant leadership, there are 10 principles, which is listening, empathy, healing, awareness, persuasion, conceptualization, foresight, stewardship, commitment to the growth of people, and building community. Let's go over each one of these. First, we have listening. And you can reflect back to an earlier lesson of communication. Traditionally, leaders have been valued for their communication and decision-making skills. Servant leaders must reinforce these important skills by making a deep commitment to listening inherently to others. Servant leaders seek to identify and clarify the will of the group. They seek to listen respectively to what is being done and said, not just what's said. Listening also encompasses getting in touch with one's inner voice and seeking to understand what is being communicated. Second, we have empathy. Servant leaders strive to understand and empathize with others. People need to be accepted and recognized for their special and unique spirit. One must assume the good intentions of employees/partners and not reject them as people, even when forced or rejected or called into question their behavior or performance. Next, we have healing. Learning to heal is a powerful force for transforming and integration. One of the great strengths of a servant leader is the potential for healing oneself and others. In The Servant as a Leader, Greenleaf writes, there is something subtle communicating to those being served and led, if implicated. The compact between the servant leader and the led is understanding that the search for wholeness is something that they have. Awareness. General awareness, and especially self-awareness, strengthens the servant leader. Making a commitment to foster awareness can be scary. One never knows what they may discover. Greenleaf observed, awareness is not a giver of solace, it's just the opposite. Do others believe you have a strong awareness for what's going on. Servant leaders have a strong sense of what's going on around them. They always look for clues from others' opinions and decisions. They know what's going on and will rarely be fooled. 5, we have persuasion. Servant leaders rely on persuasion rather than positional authority in making decisions. Servant leaders seek to convince others rather than coerce compliance. This particular element offers one of the cleanest distinctions between traditional authoritarianism model and that of servant leadership. Servant leaders is effective at building consistencies between the group. Conceptualization. Servant leaders seek to nurture their abilities to dream great dreams. They have the ability to look at organizations and any issues within the organization from a conceptualization perception. This means the leader must think beyond day-to-day realities. Servant leaders must seek a delicate balance between conceptualization and day-to-day focus. Foresight. Foresight is a characteristic that enables servant leaders to understand lessons from the past, the realities of the present, and likely consequences of the decisions in the future. It is deeply rooted in the intuitive mind. 8, we have stewardship. Stewardship often characterized by a strong sense of stewardship. Stewardship stems from medieval times when a steward would be assigned to hone the skills and development of a young prince in the preparation for his reign. A steward in an organization is responsible for preparing its destiny, usually the betterment of the society. When we describe a leader as having a strong sense of stewardship, we refer to a desire to prepare the organization to contribute to a greater good of society, not unlike preparing the prince to serve a greater good for the kingdom. 9, we have growth. Do employees believe that you're committed to helping them develop and grow? Servant leaders have a strong commitment to the growth of people. They believe that all employees have something to offer beyond their tangible contribution. Servant leaders work hard to help employees develop in a number of ways. Servant leaders need to connect with others' developmental needs and actively find ways to help them reach their true potential as employees. And number 10, building a community. Do employees feel a strong sense of community? Servant leaders have a strong sense of community spirit and work hard to foster it in an organization. They believe the organization needs to function as a community and work hard to build community within. Servant leaders are aware that the shift from local communities to large institutions as the primary sharpener of humanity has changed our perception and caused a sense of loss. Servant leaders seek to identify a means for building community among those who are part of an organization. So this brings us to discussion board topic number 5. As a servant leader, which principle do we need the most with each type of follower? Remember the 5 followers that we discussed earlier. After participating in the discussion, proceed to the next slide. But at this time, pause the video and complete this topic. So, in summary of the lesson, you have to remember these key points. Followership, encouraging the effective follower. You have to encourage the effective follower or add it or bring it out of people. Understanding and mastering the relationship between leadership and followership can make the difference between mediocrity and excellence. Remember the model of the follower's behavior. The 4 ranges that make up the model, which are independent critical thinking and dependent uncritical thinking, active and passive. Also remember the 5 different types of categories of followers, which are effective followers, alienated followers, sheep, yes people, and survivors. How an effective follower displays leadership attributes and competencies in the leadership requirement model. The 7 Army values of an effective leader, the effective leader exhibits. The concepts of leadership and followership, the back and forth between the two. And finally, the 10 principles of servant leadership and the leadership requirements model. Those principles are listening, empathy, healing, awareness, persuasion, conceptualization, foresight, stewardship, commitment to growth of the people, and building of the community. If you have any questions concerning the material, you can email the facilitator that you're assigned to. This brings us to topic number 6, the discussion board topic number 6. What would it take for you as a leader to make a commitment towards servant leadership within your unit? And how can you teach your soldiers to become servant leaders? After participating in the discussion board, proceed to the next slide. But at this time, pause the video and complete this topic. All right. This is the last slide, but it's your activity. You will prepare a short essay comparing and contrasting followership and servant leadership. The requirements and rubric are located in paragraph Bravo 15 of the ISAP. The essay must meet the following requirements. The length has to be 250 through 750 words. The font is Arial and the font size is 12. Margins, 1 inch all around. Spacing, double space. Format, it has to be a 5-paragraph essay. Do not justify right margins. Utilize a graphic organizer of your choice, but don't include it in the essay. Follow the Army writing style and standard English writing. Include a strong purpose statement and make sure that you use a second set of eyes to fix any corrections or catch anything that you won't catch when you read it over. All right, so this concludes the lesson. If you have any questions concerning the material, you can email your facilitator.